Hello and welcome to App Trap with me, Squarewings, a weekly look at the best that the App Store has to offer in iPad and iPhone gaming. Up first we have Angry Birds Space. It seems fitting to begin any series of iOS game reviews with a mention of Rovio, the phenomenally popular developer of the Angry Birds franchise. While some have hailed Angry Birds and games of its ilk a revolution in mobile gaming, others have remained stoically critical of the format and the often cynical marketing techniques employed by Rovio and their contemporaries. Rovio themselves famously stated that console games are dying and that developers must seek to innovate and think outside the box in order to maintain financial and critical success. So here we are, the forefront of this mobile gaming renaissance with an app about birds flinging themselves at pigs. Sorry, space birds flinging themselves at space pigs in space. I don't think I'll trade in my Xbox just yet. That being said, Angry Birds Space is a notable step forward for Rovio, improving and iterating on the original in almost every conceivable way. I, like many other people, played the original Angry Birds game when it was first released, and whilst aspects of it were fun and enjoyable, I found the chief problem to be the fact that you could do the same thing 3 to 4 times and different results would occur. It was seemingly impossible to recreate an action through skill, which led to unbelievable levels of frustration. I think part of what differentiates the mobile gaming scene is the level of skill required to play a lot of these games, particularly the popular ones. The first Angry Birds was typical of this in many ways, in that you didn't have to be very good to play it, and it was seemingly impossible to become very good at it, as things would just happen seemingly at random. The sequel, however, is much improved. I find that it's in many ways similar to a normal game. You can get conceivably better. The orbit mechanics have remained so interesting throughout my time playing it. I remember being fascinated with that in Super Mario Galaxy and games of that ilk, and I think that it carries over so well here, adding a real sense of depth to the game, and I think that's something that was certainly well required. I mean, saying that, you can see on the screen here, one of the biggest problems is that when playing the levels, as soon as you finish, as soon as you kill or squash or asphyxiate, and it sounds incredibly violent when I say it like that, but as soon as the last pig is destroyed, the time that you actually have to sit and do nothing to wait for the game over screen is astronomical. I mean, it's bare belief. I mean, you're just looking at nothing while the game decides it's okay for you to continue. Another pander to the modern age of mobile in-app purchase gaming you can see on screen now, the Space Eagles. This is supposed to be where you would come to a level that you would struggle to complete with the normal tools at your disposal. So you can press the Space Eagle button, and as you see, an eagle comes out and creates a black hole which seems to absorb everything in it. Obviously not the birds, the planets, or anything that would damage the game, just all of your enemies. You are given a certain amount of these as part of Angry Birds Space, and they are more available for purchase through the wonderful in-app purchase system. I mean, obviously this review is only going to cover a brief segment of the game. I wouldn't want to spoil the later proceedings, but there is real variation in this, and the levels do get significantly harder, significantly different, and really do bring in a lot of new mechanics. I don't think it ever gets as innovative as the puzzling iteration of something Valve-based like Portal, where new mechanics are so well woven into the game that you're constantly learning throughout the entire duration. But I do feel that this is definitely a step in the right direction, and whatever comes next in the Angry Birds franchise will hopefully get us most of the way there. Next we have a game that I first came across many years ago as part of a Steam sale in its 2D Boys classic puzzling game World of Goo. And World of Goo represents a polar opposite side of the App Store to Angry Birds, in that it was a PC game originally, as well as having a port developed for Nintendo's WiiWare system. And over the years it developed a large amount of critical acclaim and quite a lot of financial success. So initially I was quite wary of the iOS port, having about 18 months ago played it on an iPod Touch, I think, and obviously the interface was far too cramped and it was just impossible to enjoy. But then, having recently got an iPad, I decided to come back to it and really rediscovered the game, and it's more incredible than ever, and this is really the platform to play it on. It's a brilliantly original concept in World of Goo, in that you create lattice-like constructions out of this strange malleable goo substance with these sort of nodes that you drag. And you create these sort of very Eiffel Tower looking structures with the idea that you get your goo from the starting point to a pipe, and they're then sucked into this pipe, and you have to have a certain amount that are able to go in and that aren't part of your construction. As you can imagine, over the course of the game, the challenge really increases, as well as the type of goo balls you get and their various functions. And in some of the harder levels, things can get pretty sticky, if you'll pardon the pun. There's a real sense of vaudevillian charm about the design, and the actual visual design of the game is really stunning. And there's just never been something that's come along and done this quite so succinctly as World of Goo. I mean, a lot of games have this sort of art style. I think, it's carried across in Limbo particularly well, but World of Goo just does it with this sense of humour about itself and joy, and I think it just really works. What you see now is the in-game narrative system that's delivered to you via the signs. You can tap the sign on each level, and there's always a small poem or a funny bit of prose written by the game's designers, and it really helps to bring you into this strange industrious world that the goo balls inhabit. I think that if I were to raise an issue with World of Goo, and it's something quite small, it's that I feel that the goo constructions themselves are just too malleable and too fragile. It feels a lot like you're not constructing shapes but bending jelly, and I don't really think that works with the puzzle aesthetic. This becomes particularly apparent later on when some of the levels have you avoid various traps. I think there's one coming up in a second. I also think that it's not a criticism at all, but World of Goo, there's so many levels now that the game has released in this final form on the iPad that it feels quite overwhelming, and you get to the stage where you have levels where you can pick sort of level A or level B, and you can branch off down these different paths, and it just becomes an incredibly large task. But for the price, I think it was about $1.99 in a sale when I picked it up. I couldn't believe the amount of game you're getting, let alone the quality of game you're getting. I'd heartily recommend this, and as much as I would say it's an essential purchase on the iPad. Thank you very much for listening to my first 2 reviews. If anyone has any thoughts or ideas, I'm going to leave my Twitter and my email address in the video description, and feel free to leave comments below, particularly if anyone's got any suggestions on any apps to review next. I'm open to anything. So, thank you very much for watching. Have a great week. See you later.